Okay, our next reader is Michael Kimball, who, you can buy her books downstairs on the first floor. Pamela's books, everybody's books. We've said that before. Michael Kimball is the author of 7 books, including Galaga, Big Ray, Dear Everybody, and Us. His work has been translated into 12 languages and featured on NPR's All Things Considered and The Vice, as well as in The Guardian and The Bomb. Michael?
Thanks. I have a couple different books I'm going to read from. The first one is Galaga. It was written about the video game from the 80s, if any of you were around to play that. The book is one paragraph for every one of the 256 stages of the game, so I'm just going to read a few of those different stages. Stage 1. Galaga was Alec Baldwin's... This isn't working, is it?
No. I called them.
Okay. Galaga was Alec Baldwin's favorite arcade game, and it might have saved his life. Apparently, in the 1980s, Mr. Baldwin would play the game as a way to come down from his long nights of drinking and doing coke. In the morning, he would show up at a warehouse arcade in Los Angeles and wait for the owner of the place to open up for the day. He would play arcade games while other people were eating breakfast and going to work. According to Mr. Baldwin, playing video games was the only way I could go beta and go into that state I needed to be where I could calm down and take my mind off everything. The rush of playing video games became a substitute for the rush of drugs and alcohol. Stage 2. Galaga is a coin-op arcade game and a sequel to Galaxian, itself an unofficial update to Space Invaders. Galaga is a shooter, a fixed shooter, a spacey, a space shooter, a bug shooter, a single-screen shmup, aka shoot 'em up. Galaga is also sometimes called a bug war, an exterminator, and a kind of insecticide. Just a side note, I've never really seen or heard of Galaga being referred to as an exterminator, but I thought it was funny. And so the whole book weaves through things about the game, trivia about the game, like Alec Baldwin, all the songs that Galaga appears in, which is kind of crazy, the number of rap lyrics it's in. And then it has all the gameplay, how to play the game. If you ever wanted to learn and go to Crabtown, USA, they have 2 machines. And then it also weaves through me growing up. I was an adolescent when I was playing, and the game was an escape from my rough household that I grew up in. But it was also my first really good friend and I. This is what we did. We went and played arcade games. So it's those 3 things running through. And so this is a bit of the personal narrative that ties in. One of the reasons I've been drawn to Galaga is my recurring apocalyptic nightmares in which my school, my neighborhood, America, or the earth is being invaded by Russians, monsters, or aliens. In these nightmares, I had to save whatever was under attack. On some level, Galaga was my nightmares transformed into an arcade game, but it was fun and I wasn't as afraid to die. It only cost $0.25 to fight the invading alien insects of Galaga. Who wouldn't want to do that? Stage 13. Rule 34 states, if it exists, there is porn of it. After Googling Galaga and porn, I found a drawing of a naked Terezi, the blind troll from a comic called Homestruck, feeling up the Galaga fighter. I found a series of photos of porn star Jordan Capri getting naked in front of a Galaga machine. I found out that some people see the futuristic art on the side of Galaga as 2 huge orange breasts with big red nipples. And I found a photo of a naked gamer girl with her knees up and her legs spread while a Game Boy defends her vagina from 3 Galaga fighters that are photoshopped into the shot. Here's a little Baltimore bit. Former Baltimore Raven Ray Lewis, one of the greatest linebackers to ever play football, has a Galaga arcade machine in one of his homes. That's it. I knew I wasn't actually saving the world from alien invasion when I was playing Galaga, and in fact, alien insects are probably not an actual threat to the future of the Earth. But playing the game still felt important. To understand how much Galaga and other video games meant to me, you have to understand the difficulty of my adolescence. Which I'm probably not going to read from. It's in here, but it's a bit much. There is a Galaga hack called Galaga, in which the bosses are lions, the butterflies are cheetahs, and the bees are tigers, because both have stripes. There's another Galaga hack called House Galaga, in which the bosses are Maine Coons, the butterflies are calicos, and the bees are tabbies, again because they both have stripes. In both hacks, the fighters are cat paws that shoot talons and make a little meow sound with every shot instead of pew. It's crazy the number of hacks that people came up with. There's one in particular I'm looking. Okay, here's another hack. There's a Galaga hack that is terribly renamed Gallbladderaga. It was created by an internist who grew up playing Galaga and credits his surgical skills to playing arcade games. The bosses are human hearts, the bees are gallbladders, the butterflies are stomachs because both of them flutter. The fighters are surgeons in white gowns, and the bullets they shoot are little scalpels. When any of the invading organs are shot, they explode in a splatter of blood. All right, I'm going to stop there with that, because I like that one a lot. And so the other book, this is called Michael Kimble Writes Your Life Story on a Postcard, and it's only called that because the first time I did this thing, I was my friend made up a board for me. It was at Transmodern, the Performance Arts Festival. And he just made a sign it was behind my head that just said Michael Kimble Write Your Story on a postcard. I sat at a table, people could walk up, and I would interview them, and then in about 5 minutes I would write whatever they had told me I would write on a postcard. Eventually the project evolved, and I did personal interviews, and I interviewed people over the phone, over email, that sort of thing. Wrote a few hundred of these things, and the book is about 60 or 70 of my favorite ones. I'm just going to read one, and this came to me it was somebody I did not know, but her uncle had just died. Her uncle, who she loved very much and was a great figure in her life, especially when she was a little girl. And she sent me his AA life story, which is something people going through AA do. They usually do it verbally and tell it to people, but because of his smoking, he had lost his voice, and so he had written it down. And so I got this was about 10,000 words that this man wrote about his life, and I condensed it to this little bit that was on a postcard. Monty Reek was born in Montana in 1943. He had a normal childhood. There was no TV, so he concentrated on being a kid, playing with his dogs, roaming the hills, going swimming down at the river. At 7, he was introduced to nuns, which was terrifying. At 11, hunting with his dad, Monty shot an antelope that went down but didn't die. Monty always remembered the terror in its eyes. His dad was proud, but Monty cried the rest of the day. At 12, Monty, an altar boy, threw up during Mass, on the priest, on the altar, and he thought he was going to hell for it. In 1956, Monty's family moved to Billings, and Monty was awed by the big city. In 1959, Monty got drunk for the first time. It was down by the river, and he kissed a couple of girls. It was euphoric. He wanted to feel that way again and again. By junior year, he was drinking nearly every weekend. That summer, his parents divorced, his mom going south, his dad and sister north. Monty stayed by himself in Billings to finish high school. In 1962, Monty graduated from high school and got a job working construction. He worked all day and drank all night. It was awesome. It was his idea of being a man. The next fall, he went to college, majored in drinking, and stopped going to classes. He started working construction again, saved up, then went to Mexico to drink it all. Back in Billings, he asked his dad for money for college and drank it up too. At 21, he could finally go into bars, which is fascinating. One night, he drunk drove his car into a house. Then he borrowed a friend's car and drunk drove it into the police chief's car. Monty fled to Las Vegas and hid out in his mom's house. Eventually, it was safe enough to go back to Billings, where he worked all day and drank all night. Monty met Bert, Alberta, on a blind date. She didn't drink, but Monty was willing to overlook that. He asked her to marry him, but she didn't answer. He asked Bert again, and again she didn't answer. In 1966, Monty got a job in Seattle at Boeing. Bert wrote him every day. Monty drank and wrote back every night. One day she wrote him she was marrying somebody else. Monty quit Boeing and moved to Canada, where the Canadian government drafted him to fight forest fires. After that, Monty moved back to Seattle and met Judy, who could match him drink for drink and did the same drugs too. They fought when they were drunk. Monty asked Judy to marry him, and she said yes. Then they had a big fight, and Monty stayed away for days. On his way to see her, he crashed and was taken to jail for a DWI. He called Judy from jail, but she had already left for California with an old boyfriend. In 1972, Monty started his 20 years of working at a steel factory. Half the workers were addicts, the other half alcoholics. Monty took speed so he could drink more. He became a molder, got a raise, and bought a house. He met Diane, whose kids started calling him daddy, but she eventually made him choose Diane or drinking. Alcohol was Monty's true love. In 1974, Monty picked Joanna, Joe, a golden retriever, out of a litter of 7 because he liked her mother. Joe kept Monty out of bars some, but Monty drank anywhere and everywhere by this time. He got pulled over all over Seattle. Sometimes he got a DWI, sometimes his lawyer got him off. In 1976, Monty spent the summer in jail, which wasn't so bad, and he could get any drug there, which is where he discovered cocaine, which became his drug of choice for the next 18 years. In 1979, he started judge-ordered treatment. His sobriety lasted 3 months. After this, Monty got rid of his car because he liked alcohol better than his driver's license. He got rides to work with his roommates who all worked with him. Monty's house had turned into a crash pad for wayward husbands. He always shared his house, his booze, his drugs, as long as they were good to Joe. In 1980, Monty started taking antabuse to stop drinking, but started doing more drugs, especially cocaine, which introduced him to lots of criminals. Around this time, Monty met Jerry, who had easy access to cocaine and became his partner in crime for 10 years. Soon, Monty stopped snorting cocaine and started smoking crack. He got heavy into the drug trade, buying and selling, which was how he met Nettie at a crack house. He knew she was his kind of woman when she put in a pinch of Copenhagen. In 1988, Joe died in Monty's arms at the vet. She had been his constant companion for over 14 years. Monty's health got bad, his kidneys, high blood pressure, signs of impotency. One night, Monty became confused and disoriented. He ran into a wall, had no coordination. Monty had a stroke but kept drinking through it. At the hospital, after the doctors told him he would live, all he wanted was a beer. He was drinking 30 minutes after he was released from the hospital. After that, Monty went back on antabuse and went back to work. He had another stroke 3 months later, but kept doing crack for 3 days before going to the hospital. The first night out of the hospital, he went to a bar and then got into a fist fight over a drug deal. By 1992, Monty couldn't work anymore and retired, which gave him more time for alcohol and drugs. Monty sold his house as is with the idea of moving back to Billings and living off the money, but he smoked the money instead. In 1993, Monty went back to Billings the same way he left 27 years before, drunk. He moved in with his wonderful sister Connie, who also spent lots of time at his father's house, who was a drunk too. In 1994, Monty received 2 years of Social Security back pay and went back to Seattle to do crack. He thought of himself as a good junkie and smoked until he didn't have any money left. His nose bled all the way back to Billings. Monty got a little house there and made the Rainbow Bar his second home. He told people he came back to Billings to die. It got him lots of free drinks. Monty decided to drink himself to death. Every day he would sit and drink until he shit his pants. On the way home, he would throw up in front of the place where they had AA meetings. He wanted to get sober, but not drinking scared him. It's what he had been doing the last 37 years. On August 1st, 1995, Monty entered a treatment facility sober. Weeks after he got out, he started going to AA meetings and was surprised at how good it felt to share his life story. In 1997, Monty was diagnosed with throat cancer, had to give up smoking too, and then had to have surgery, after which he was never able to speak again. He carried little spiral notebooks in his shirt pocket and he wrote his conversations. He went to AA every day, which saved his life, and he spent more time with a new generation of nieces and nephews, which he loved doing. Monty died in 2009 from complications from cancer. He was clean and sober the last 5,078 days of his life. He gave out lifesavers to every kid he met and dog treats to every dog he met. He was stubborn and funny to the end. Thank you.